Your Honor, this woman isolated my husband from his family, controlled his finances, and manipulated a vulnerable elderly man. This is textbook elder abuse. My stepmother, Claudia, delivered those words through perfectly timed tears while the judge stared at me like I was a monster who preyed on the weak. But when my lawyer stood up and announced that we had 14 months of security camera footage and 89 recorded phone calls showing Claudia demanding money, threatening to pull the plug on my father, and coaching witnesses on what lies to tell, her lawyer's face went so white I thought he might need medical attention. And I realized that the woman who had tried to destroy me was about to watch her entire case collapse in the most public way possible. Before I tell you what was on those recordings and why Claudia ended up being arrested in the same courtroom where she tried to have me convicted, take a moment to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. This story might just change how you see family manipulation, the importance of documentation, and what happens when someone underestimates a daughter's love for her father. My name is Miranda Townsend, and 2 years ago, I almost went to prison for protecting my father from the woman who was supposed to love him. Let me start from the beginning. My father, Walter Townsend, is 74 years old. He spent 40 years as a mechanical engineer, building a career that earned him respect, a comfortable retirement, and savings of nearly $2 million. My mother, his first wife and the love of his life, passed away from breast cancer when I was 19. Dad never fully recovered from losing her, but he eventually found his footing again, throwing himself into hobbies, travel, and spending time with me and my younger brother, Kyle. Then, 8 years ago, he met Claudia at a grief support group. Claudia was 52 at the time, recently widowed, and seemingly kind. She listened to my father talk about Mom. She shared her own stories of loss. She made him laugh for the first time in years. I wanted to be happy for him. I really did. After Mom died, I'd worried that Dad would spend the rest of his life alone, drowning in memories he couldn't escape. If Claudia could bring him joy, I thought, then maybe this was a blessing. They got married after a year of dating. I was a bridesmaid at the wedding. The first 2 years were fine, or at least, they seemed fine from the outside. Dad and Claudia traveled together, attended social events, built what appeared to be a happy life. I saw them at holidays and occasional dinners, and while Claudia was never particularly warm to me, she wasn't openly hostile either. Things changed when Dad turned 70. That's when the health issues started. A minor heart attack. Then diabetes. Then early signs of cognitive decline that his doctors said needed monitoring. Dad was still sharp, still capable of making decisions, but he was slowing down. He needed more help. He was vulnerable. And Claudia saw her opportunity. The first sign was financial. Dad had always been meticulous about money. He knew exactly where every dollar went, kept spreadsheets that tracked every expense, and reviewed his accounts weekly with the kind of precision that came from 40 years of engineering work. But suddenly, there were unexplained withdrawals. Large purchases I'd never heard about. A new car for Claudia, a Mercedes, no less, when Dad had always driven practical American sedans. Jewelry that sparkled on her fingers and wrists at family dinners. A renovation on the house that seemed to involve mostly cosmetic upgrades to spaces only she used, a new bathroom vanity, custom closet organizers, a sitting room redecorated in expensive fabrics Dad would never have chosen. When I asked Dad about it, he seemed confused. Disoriented in a way that went beyond normal aging. Claudia handles the finances now, he said, his voice carrying that uncertain quality I'd started to hear more often. It's easier that way. That didn't sound like my father. The man who had taught me to balance a checkbook at 12, who had lectured me about compound interest and retirement planning, who had always said that, knowing where your money goes is knowing where your life goes, he would never just hand over control without oversight. He would never surrender his independence so completely. Something was very, very wrong. I started paying closer attention, visiting more often, asking more questions, even when Claudia clearly didn't want me there. The second sign was isolation. Claudia began limiting Dad's contact with friends and family. Old buddies from his engineering days would call, and Claudia would tell them Dad was resting or not feeling well. My brother Kyle, who lived in Seattle, found that his calls went unanswered for days at a time. When I tried to visit, Claudia always had an excuse. Dad was tired, Dad had a doctor's appointment, Dad wasn't up for company. I pushed through anyway. I showed up unannounced one Saturday afternoon, and what I found terrified me. Dad was sitting alone in the living room, unshaven, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in days. The house, which Mom had always kept immaculate, was dirty. There were dishes piled in the sink, mail scattered across every surface, and a strange smell coming from somewhere I couldn't identify. Dad? I knelt beside his chair. Are you okay? Where's Claudia? He looked at me with eyes that seemed clouded, distant. She's out. She's always out. When did you last eat? He couldn't remember. I made him lunch, cleaned what I could, and called Claudia. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding annoyed. He's fine, Miranda. You're overreacting. He's not fine. He's sitting in filth, and he can't remember when he last had a meal. He has dementia. That's what happens. His doctor said it was mild cognitive decline. Not dementia. Not yet. And even if it were, that doesn't explain why nobody is taking care of him. Claudia's voice turned cold. I don't have to explain anything to you. He's my husband. I'll care for him how I see fit. She hung up. That night, I called Kyle. We talked for 3 hours, going over everything I'd seen, everything I suspected. By the end of the call, we'd made a decision. I would move closer to Dad's house, increase my visits, and document everything. If Claudia was neglecting him, or worse, financially exploiting him, we needed proof. I spent the next 14 months building that proof. The first thing I did was install security cameras. Dad's house had an old alarm system that had never been updated. I convinced him to let me modernize it, which included discrete cameras in the common areas. Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state for audio recording, but video-only surveillance in your own home is legal, and Dad, in a lucid moment, signed a consent form authorizing the system. The footage was damning. I watched Claudia go through Dad's wallet while he slept. I watched her forge his signature on checks. I watched her bring strangers into the house, men I later identified as contractors, and pay them with Dad's money for work that was never done. I watched her scream at my father for being useless and ruining her life, then smile sweetly when she thought anyone might be watching. The phone calls were even worse. Dad still had a landline. He'd never trusted cell phones, and I discovered that Claudia used it constantly to coordinate with her sister, a woman named Brenda who lived in Ohio. I obtained legal permission to record calls on that line, with Dad's written consent as the homeowner, and what I captured over the next year was a masterclass in elder exploitation. He signed the new account forms, Claudia told Brenda in one call. Another $50,000 moved to my name. He didn't even read them. What if the kids find out? Brenda asked. What are they going to do? By the time they figure it out, there won't be anything left to fight over. And if they try, I'll claim he gave it to me willingly. Who's going to believe the dementia patient over his loving wife? In another call, Claudia outlined her long-term plan: drain Dad's accounts, transfer the house into her name, and then, her words, put him somewhere and wait for nature to take its course. And if that takes too long? Brenda asked. Claudia laughed. There are ways to speed things up. A missed medication here, a fall down the stairs there. Old people are fragile. I sat in my car and listened to that recording 17 times, shaking with rage and terror. This woman wasn't just exploiting my father. She was planning to kill him. I took everything to an elder law attorney named Patricia Donovan. She reviewed the footage, the recordings, and the financial documents I'd managed to obtain. Then she looked at me with a mixture of admiration and concern. This is comprehensive, she said. But we need to move carefully. If Claudia finds out you're gathering evidence, she could accelerate her timeline. Your father could be in immediate danger. What do we do? First, we file for emergency guardianship. With this evidence, a judge should grant it quickly. Then we get your father out of that house and into safe care. Once he's protected, we pursue criminal charges. We filed the paperwork on a Thursday. By Friday afternoon, I had temporary emergency guardianship of my father. I showed up at the house with a sheriff's deputy, a moving crew, and a determination that nothing would stop me from saving my dad. Claudia wasn't home when we arrived. I packed Dad's essentials, clothes, medications, photographs of Mom, and moved him into a memory care facility that had been recommended by his neurologist. It was clean, safe, and staffed by people who actually cared about their residents. Dad cried when he realized what was happening. Is this because of Claudia? He asked. Did I do something wrong? No, Dad. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to take care of you now. Everything's going to be okay. For 2 weeks, everything was quiet. Claudia hired a lawyer, contested the guardianship, and demanded visitation rights, all standard maneuvers. We prepared for a hearing. I thought we were ready. Then Claudia played her trump card. She filed a lawsuit against me for elder abuse. The complaint was audacious in its lies. It claimed that I had isolated Walter Townsend from his loving wife, taken control of his finances without authorization, and manipulated a vulnerable elderly man for personal financial gain. It demanded that the guardianship be revoked, that I be criminally charged, and that Claudia be awarded full control of Dad's estate as compensation for her emotional suffering. She also went to the media. A local news station ran a segment titled, "Daughter Accused of Elder Abuse, Wife Fights for Justice." They showed photos of Claudia crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, talking about how much she loved my father, how I had stolen him from her, how she just wanted to bring her husband home where he belongs. They showed their wedding photo, Dad in a tuxedo, Claudia in white, both of them smiling like they had the whole world ahead of them. They didn't contact me for comment. They didn't mention that there was another side to the story. They didn't question why a devoted wife's husband had been malnourished and dehydrated when he was rescued from her care. The segment went viral locally. For 3 months, I was the villain. Friends stopped calling. People I'd known for years suddenly couldn't meet my eyes at the grocery store. Neighbors who'd waved at me for a decade now hurried inside when they saw my car pull into the driveway. My employer, a marketing firm where I'd worked for 6 years, suggested I take a leave of absence until the matter was resolved. It's not that we believe the allegations, my boss said, not meeting my eyes. It's just that the publicity is uncomfortable. I lost 20 pounds from stress. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claudia's face on the news, heard her voice calling me a monster. I started having panic attacks, something I'd never experienced before. My doctor prescribed anxiety medication. My therapist said it was a normal response to being publicly vilified for doing the right thing. Normal. None of it felt normal. But I had the recordings. I had the footage. And I had Patricia Donovan, who called me every few days to remind me that the truth would come out in court. The hearing was scheduled for a Tuesday in March. The courtroom was packed, reporters, curious onlookers, and Claudia's entire support network, including her sister Brenda and a parade of friends who'd been prepped to testify about what a wonderful wife she was. Claudia took the stand first. She was dressed conservatively, makeup minimal, voice trembling with rehearsed emotion. She described our happy marriage and my sudden, unexplained hostility. She cried when she talked about being ripped away from her husband. She painted a picture of a devoted wife victimized by a jealous, greedy stepdaughter. The judge, a stern woman in her 60s named Honor Ruth Blackwell, listened carefully, occasionally jotting notes. When Claudia finished, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Suspicion, maybe. Or just careful neutrality. Then it was our turn. Patricia stood slowly, deliberately. Your Honor, the defense would like to submit the following evidence: 14 months of security camera footage from Mr. Townsend's residence, 89 recorded telephone conversations, financial records showing unauthorized transfers totaling $647,000, and sworn statements from 3 healthcare professionals who examined Mr. Townsend after he was removed from the plaintiff's care. Claudia's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit named Gregory Walsh, shot to his feet. Objection. We were not provided with this evidence in discovery. The evidence was provided 3 weeks ago, Patricia replied calmly. We have delivery confirmation and a signed receipt from your office. Walsh's face went red. He fumbled through his papers, clearly having never reviewed what we'd sent. Judge Blackwell raised an eyebrow. Counselor, are you telling me you didn't review evidence that was properly submitted? We had an administrative oversight. Sit down, Mr. Walsh. The judge turned to Patricia. Proceed. What followed was 4 hours of systematic destruction. We started with the financial records. Patricia walked through every unauthorized transfer, every forged signature, every account that Claudia had drained. She showed the pattern: small withdrawals at first, testing the waters, then larger and larger amounts as Claudia realized no one was watching. Then came the video footage. Patricia had prepared a carefully edited compilation, but she'd also brought the raw files in case anyone questioned authenticity. The courtroom watched in absolute silence as Claudia screamed at my father for being a burden and ruining her retirement. They watched her go through his wallet while he slept in his recliner, counting the bills, pocketing what she wanted. They watched her sign his name to documents, bank forms, transfer authorizations, power of attorney amendments, while he sat confused and disoriented in the background, sometimes asking what she was doing only to be told to shut up and let me handle things. One particular video showed Claudia on the phone, pacing the living room while Dad sat motionless in his chair. He's useless, she said to whoever was on the other end. He just sits there all day, drooling and forgetting things. I didn't sign up for this. I signed up for the beach house and the investment accounts, not playing nurse to a vegetable. My father wasn't a vegetable. He had mild cognitive impairment. He needed help and patience, not cruelty and theft. This is manipulated. Claudia shouted from her seat, half rising before a deputy pushed her back down. She doctored those videos. She's a liar. Judge Blackwell silenced her with a look that could have frozen fire. The witness will remain quiet, or she will be removed from this courtroom. This is your only warning. Then came the phone calls. Patricia played the recording of Claudia and Brenda discussing the financial transfers. She played the one where Claudia bragged about getting Dad to sign forms he didn't even read. And finally, she played the recording where Claudia discussed speeding things up if Dad's death took too long. A missed medication here, a fall down the stairs there. Old people are fragile. The courtroom gasped. Claudia's face had gone from defiant to pale to something approaching green. Her lawyer was staring at his notes like they might contain an escape route. Judge Blackwell stopped the recording. Her voice was ice. "Mrs. Townsend, did you make those statements?" Claudia's mouth opened and closed. No sound came out. "Let the record show that the plaintiff is not responding." The judge turned to Patricia. "Is there more?" "Yes, Your Honor. We have statements from Mr. Townsend's physician, his neurologist, and the staff at his current care facility. All confirm that when he was removed from Mrs. Townsend's care, he was malnourished, dehydrated, and showing signs of medication mismanagement. In the 3 months since, he has gained 12 pounds, his cognitive function has improved by 40%, and he has repeatedly expressed fear of returning to his wife." Patricia paused, letting that sink in. "We also have a sworn statement from Mr. Townsend himself, taken under supervision of a court-appointed evaluator, in which he describes being scared of Claudia, feeling trapped in his own home, and believing that she wanted me dead so she could have the money." Claudia finally found her voice. "He has dementia. You can't trust anything he says." "His physician disagrees," Patricia replied. "And so does the court-appointed evaluator. Mr. Townsend has mild cognitive impairment, but he is legally competent to provide testimony about his own experiences." Judge Blackwell had heard enough. "I'm going to take a 30-minute recess," she announced. "When we return, I'll deliver my ruling. But I want to be clear, based on what I've seen today, this court has serious concerns about the plaintiff's conduct, concerns that may warrant criminal referral." During the recess, Claudia tried to flee. She made it as far as the courthouse steps before 2 sheriff's deputies intercepted her. Apparently, Judge Blackwell had anticipated this and had alerted security. They brought her back in handcuffs. When court resumed, the judge didn't waste time. "In the matter of Claudia Townsend versus Miranda Townsend, I find the following. The plaintiff's claims of elder abuse against the defendant are not only unsubstantiated but appear to be a deliberate attempt to obstruct justice and deflect from her own criminal conduct." She turned to Claudia, who was now seated between 2 deputies. "Mrs. Townsend, the evidence presented today shows a clear pattern of financial exploitation, emotional abuse, and neglect of a vulnerable adult. The recorded statements regarding speeding up your husband's death are particularly disturbing and will be referred to the district attorney for potential criminal charges including conspiracy to commit murder." The courtroom erupted. Reporters were typing frantically. Claudia was screaming that it was all lies, that I had set her up, that she was the real victim. Judge Blackwell banged her gavel. "Order. Mrs. Townsend, you are remanded into custody pending criminal investigation. The emergency guardianship granted to Miranda Townsend is hereby made permanent. All assets frozen during this proceeding will be returned to Walter Townsend's estate, and a full accounting of Mrs. Townsend's financial activities will be conducted." She looked at me then, and her expression softened slightly. "Ms. Townsend, your diligence in documenting your father's situation likely saved his life. This court commends your actions and dismisses all claims against you with prejudice." I couldn't speak. I couldn't even move. 14 months of fear, 3 months of being called a monster, and now, justice. Patricia squeezed my hand. "It's over. You did it." Claudia was charged with 15 counts of financial exploitation of an elderly adult, 3 counts of neglect, and 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder. Her sister Brenda was charged as an accessory. The trial took 8 months, both were convicted on all counts. Claudia received 12 years in state prison. Brenda received 5. My father is doing well. He lives in a memory care facility 15 minutes from my house, and I visit him 3 times a week, sometimes more when my schedule allows. His room is sunny, decorated with photographs of Mom and pictures from our family vacations. The staff knows him by name, knows his preferences, knows that he likes his coffee with 2 sugars and that old war movies make him happy. His cognitive decline has stabilized. His doctors say the improved nutrition and reduced stress made a significant difference. When he was living with Claudia, he was slowly being poisoned by neglect. Malnutrition affects brain function. Chronic stress accelerates cognitive decline. Isolation deepens depression. By removing him from that environment, we didn't just save his money or his dignity, we may have saved years of his life. He doesn't remember everything about his marriage to Claudia, which might be a mercy. Some memories are better lost. But he remembers the important things. He remembers me. He remembers my mother. He remembers Kyle, who flies in from Seattle every month now to spend the weekend with him. He remembers that he was an engineer, that he built things, that he mattered. And on good days, he tells me he's proud of me for fighting so hard. "Your mother would be proud too," he said last month, holding my hand in the facility's garden while butterflies danced around the flower beds. "She always said you were the brave one. Said you got it from her side of the family." He laughed at that, a real laugh, the kind I hadn't heard in years. She was probably right. I was always too trusting. Too willing to see the good in people. That's not a flaw, Dad, I told him. That's just who you are. Maybe. But I'm glad you're the suspicious one. I'm glad you saw what I couldn't see. We sat in silence for a while, watching the birds, feeling the sun on our faces. It was peaceful. It was safe. And after everything we'd been through, peace and safety felt like the greatest gifts in the world. Last week, I received a letter from a woman in Texas whose mother was in a similar situation: a predatory spouse, financial exploitation, isolation from family. She'd seen the news coverage of my case and wanted to know how I'd gathered the evidence, how I'd found the courage to keep going when everyone was calling me a monster, how I'd known that the truth would eventually come out. I wrote her back with everything I'd learned: document everything, get legal help early, don't let the abuser's narrative become the only story people hear. Most importantly, I told her to trust her instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. My stepmother tried to steal my father's money, his dignity, and his life. Then she tried to put me in prison for stopping her. But she underestimated one thing: a daughter who would do anything to protect the man who raised her. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and comment below where you're watching from. I'd love to know how many people believe in the power of documentation and the importance of fighting for the ones you love. And remember, when someone tries to make you the villain for protecting your family, keep the receipts. Keep the recordings. Keep fighting. The truth always comes out eventually. This is Miranda Townsend. And this is my truth.